In 2000, two men entered a Wendy's just before closing time. Without a moment of hesitation, they slipped behind the counter and made their way straight to the manager's office, as if they'd done it before. There, they forced the manager to call in all of his employees under the lie of an urgent meeting. Unsuspecting and obedient, the 6 employees gathered, only to be met with guns drawn and no way out. At gunpoint, the manager and his staff were marched into the restaurant's walk-in freezer. Inside, they were bound, gagged, and forced to the ground. Then, without warning, the silence was shattered by gunfire. A barrage of bullets echoed off the steel walls, leaving 5 of the 7 victims dead. One of the survivors, Patricio Castro, barely clinging to life, summoned every ounce of strength he had and managed to dial 911. Within 48 hours, the 2 perpetrators were tracked down and arrested. The most chilling detail? One of them was a former employee of that very Wendy's. Both men were sentenced to death.
I'm not saying that the Artemis 2 mission is being faked, but what I am saying, and emphatically, is I'm underwhelmed right now. I was really excited for some cool stuff, and I've seen about 10 still photographs, just static images that look slightly better than the ones taken in 1969. Apparently from the exact same spot. They have a spot they like. They like to take a picture with the Earth about that big, and then they don't take any other pictures. And what an opportunity to really stick it to the flat earthers, except for every still image makes the Earth kind of look like a flat disc. So I don't know why you're doing that. I don't need an interview with the crew telling me how they eat soup out of a pouch. Take the camera to the window and shut up and just let me see it. I don't know, why isn't there something mounted on the outside that just constantly gives me video of the Earth? Show me something with movement. Show me weather patterns moving on the Earth. Show me rotation of the Earth, zoomed out so you can see the entire sphere rotate. You really want to blow my mind? Show me some upside down flying planes. That's what Daddy wants to see. A skyline of a major city upside down with planes flying like that. That's all I want. And I'm getting none of that. And I suspect I will get none of that either. And we don't know what's real or what's fake. So I don't know why anyone's excited about anything they're seeing. This is so disappointing.
Controversial opinion, but I don't think that police should be helping a murderer and destroying evidence. Before we start today's case, if you do prefer a deep dive, I do post a brand new episode on my podcast, The Bourne Investigation, every single week. It was the middle of summer 1972 near Tamworth in Staffordshire. 14-year-old Judith Roberts came home from school and started picking at her tea. Yes, tea is the evening meal, not dinner. It's tea. Judith was an incredibly lovely, intelligent young girl, but she was quite introverted, and if anybody ever said anything nasty to her, she really did take it to heart. And on that particular day, somebody had actually told her that she was putting weight on. Like, no, never comment on somebody's weight, ever. Bless her, when she came home, she was really hungry. She wanted to eat her tea, but she was kind of just picking at it. And her dad, being a typical tactless dad, was like, eat your bloody tea. And Judith had enough. She just felt like she was getting it from all angles, and she went off on her bike and said, I'm going out for some fresh air. Her family never saw her alive again. Now, her mum knew that this was Judith's way of coping. She kind of always did this when she just needed to get a bit of headspace, go off on her bike, she'd be back within half an hour, it would all be good. Except she wasn't. She wasn't even back by 10 p.m. This was unheard of. Her mum and dad were just pacing back and forth thinking what the hell could have happened to her. Police started scouring the area, sniffer dogs were out in force. This was all over the newspapers for the next few days and everybody was desperately searching. But then on the 10th of June, 2 young soldiers walking found something. Sticking out from a pile of hedge clippings was a human hand. Judith's post-mortem was horrific. They found she'd been smashed in the head by something, most likely a hammer, and she also had male liquid on her body. And it felt like police were just desperate for a conviction. This looked really bad in the local area. They just wanted to get this news over and done with. So they zeroed in on this local teenager called Andrew Evans, and really the only reason that they focused on him was that his alibi for the evening was a little bit sketchy. He couldn't exactly remember like what he'd been up to on that one specific night, which may have been due to him being prescribed Valium for anxiety. He'd basically been kicked out the army because he was having like asthma attacks, and he was really anxious and depressed. When police questioned him, he'd been taking Valium. It makes you confused, it makes you lose your memory. Honestly, I used to take this for flight anxiety. I have about 20 flights that I don't even remember. How they were allowed to question him, not only with Valium in his system, but also without an adult or a lawyer, is beyond me. Anyway, they pretty much pressured him into a weird kind of confession. They were almost gaslighting him like, well, maybe you repressed the memories, maybe you didn't know what you were doing. They were like grilling him for 3 days straight. He almost got convinced that maybe he did do something, but turns out his memories of certain elements of the crime were actually false. Details of stuff that they knew couldn't have actually happened because of the crime scene and the post-mortem. They literally gaslit him into thinking that he'd done it, and he ended up being taken to trial, and by that point he'd got legal advice and he totally withdrew his confession. There was no physical evidence linking him to the murder at all and 0 witnesses. But despite that, he was still found guilty, and his mum, bless her, was absolutely sobbing when they read out the verdict. Andrew spent over 2 decades behind bars for something he did not do. He was finally exonerated in 1997 when they were like, oh yeah, maybe that fake confession shouldn't actually have been allowed to be used in court. But you know what's equally infuriating about this case? Investigators by this point had destroyed all of the fingerprint evidence from the crime, literally helping to ensure that the real killer was never found. And to this day, he still hasn't been. Some people actually think maybe the real killer is Peter Sutcliffe, the Yorkshire Ripper. Let me know what you guys think in the comments.
So let me get this straight. You believe that astronauts are being sent on a moon mission today on April Fool's Day. April Fool's Day. Let's watch this video of a rocket launch and see what happens. It appears as if it hits water. That's crazy, but in the Bible it says that God created a firmament to divide the waters above from the waters below. And you think this government, who lies to us about everything, is now telling us the truth on April Fool's Day? Okay, let me know what you think.
He was kidnapped off the street in the middle of the day, horrifically murdered, and then set on fire by a gang of men he had never even met, all because of the colour of his skin. I'm True Crime Caitlin, and this is the murder of Chris Donald. 15-year-old Chris was a Glaswegian boy living in the Pollokshields area. He attended Bella Houston Academy, where he was described as a good student. Chris was actually going to be sitting his exams soon, and he hoped to either qualify as a mechanic or enlist in the army. He had actually already attended a junior military camp where he was named as the best cadet. Like so many other teen boys, Chris was football obsessed and absolutely loved spending time gaming with his friends. On the 15th of March 2004, Chris left his mother Angela's flat in Pollokshields at around about 3 p.m. and started making his way to his friend's house where they were going to be spending the afternoon gaming. Just minutes into the walk, a car would approach Chris and his friends, and inside was a gang of armed men seeking revenge. Just the evening before, Imran Shahid had been on a night out in the Victoria nightclub, which was in central Glasgow, when he was glassed, either having a bottle or a glass smashed over his head. This blatant disrespect absolutely infuriated him, especially when he assumed that the person who glassed him was a part of a rival gang, people he referred to as, quote, the boys from McCulloch Street. A gang of white men. Imran was so enraged at the disrespect that he decided he was going to seek revenge. He, along with 4 other men, climbed into a stolen Mercedes and started driving around the local area, looking for a victim, looking for someone to inflict their revenge on. They weren't even looking for someone specifically. They weren't even bothered if this person was part of the rival gang. The only thing that this person had to be was white. That is when they spotted Chris and his friends, a group of innocent teenagers who had nothing to do with the gang activity. The men pounced out of the car and onto Chris's friends, and while some of the other men were having a physical altercation with Chris's friends, Imran abducted Chris. He grabbed him by the arm and started trying to force him into the footwell at the back seat of the car, while Chris is trying to grab whatever he can to stop this from happening. He starts pleading to Imran, saying, quote, "I'm only 15, what did I do?" But that did nothing to deter Imran. He abducted Chris off the middle of the street and started driving him around in this car. They drove for about 200 miles looking for somewhere to take Chris. They would end up in the Clyde area of Glasgow, and once here, Chris was dragged out of the car. He was restrained, having his arms either held or pinned behind him, and then he was stabbed at least 17 times, each of the wounds piercing one of his vital organs, including his lungs, his kidneys, and his liver. He was then doused in petrol and set on fire. At a later trial, an expert confirmed that Chris was actually still alive when he was set on fire, and that in vain he had tried to put the fire out by rolling around on the ground. 15-year-old Chris Donald burned alive as he bled to death. Meanwhile, the friends who had witnessed the kidnapping immediately contacted the police, and just a couple of hours later, police would get another phone call reporting that a car was on fire. This was the stolen Mercedes, and when it was examined, it was linked to Chris's murder. Chris's body would be discovered the following day. He was laid in the fetal position and in a charred condition as a result of being set on fire. By then, 3 of the men, including ringleader Imran, had fled the country. They had left Scotland and made their way to Pakistan. Danish Shahid and Zahid Mohammed were both arrested for their involvement in the murder. Danish was convicted of racially motivated abduction and murder, and he was handed a sentence of life imprisonment with a minimum of 17 years to serve. Zahid was convicted of assault and abduction, and he was handed a 5-year sentence. Mohammed Sarwar, a Pakistani man who happened to be the local MP for the area of Pollokshield, where Chris was from, immediately jumped into action. He managed to work with the Pakistani president to arrange a one-off extradition of all 3 of the men who fled. Now, Scotland and Pakistan didn't have extradition agreement, and so the fact that Mohammed was able to negotiate and secure this to bring these men to justice was absolutely incredible. After being arrested in Pakistan, all 3 of the men, including Imran, were arrested and brought back to Scotland. They would all be convicted of the racially motivated murder of Chris Donald. They each received life sentences with at least 23 years to serve. As far as I can see, all of the men are still incarcerated, aside from Zahid, who served only half of his 5-year sentence.
She ended her foster mom's life so that she could be with her husband. Lisa and Kevin Nolfold live with their children in Ohio, and they were described as destined to be with each other since the moment they met. Lisa was a social worker, and she just really wanted to be able to help children. Sabrina Zunick was born on October 27th of 1994, and since her parents were addicts, her grandmother raised her in Ohio. When she was starting her teenage years, her grandmother's health started to decline, so CBS had no other choice but to place her in the foster care system. She spent the next few months moving in and out of homes until July of 2011, when Lisa decided she was going to open her home to this girl who simply just needed a family to love on her. In the beginning, this is exactly how it went. Sabrina fell in love with her new family and fit right in. Because of this, Sabrina was going to school again, getting good grades, and everyone could see that she was thriving. Sadly, though, this honeymoon period was going to come to a tragic end. By December of that year, Sabrina and Lisa started to fight a lot. She accused Lisa of giving her biological daughter special treatment, and Sabrina wasn't given that treatment. Whether that was true or not, the tension between Sabrina and Lisa grew more and more. However, Sabrina found an ally in the form of Kevin, so her foster dad and Lisa's husband. When she and Lisa would have a full-blown argument, she would run over to Kevin because he was easier to talk to. This made the tension even worse because she was not only struggling with her foster daughter, but her husband wouldn't even take her side. Despite the tension, Sabrina was really happy to be in a stable home, but for Kevin and Lisa, she figured that at some point they were going to be getting a divorce. On October 27th of 2012, Sabrina turned 18 years old, and legally she was out of the care system, so she could leave if she wanted to, but she didn't want to. Sabrina applied to the state for permission to continue living with Lisa and Kevin, but Lisa told her that if their relationship didn't improve, that she had 2 months to move out. On November 16th of 2012, around 1 a.m., police received a 911 call from Lisa and Kevin's home. Call was made from 13-year-old Megan, and she was telling the dispatcher, "My sister is stabbing my mother to death. She is going to die." This was all happening to Megan right in front of her, and on the phone call you can hear Lisa pleading for help. Once police arrived to the home, Sabrina came out of the master bedroom holding a knife covered in blood. Lisa had been stabbed around 178 times and did not survive. Sabrina had used so much force that the blade had bent. At the time of the attack, Kevin was away on a business trip, so it was just Lisa with her daughters and Sabrina. Once Sabrina was taken in for questioning, they asked her what happened that night, and she stated that night she couldn't fall asleep. She was having a big migraine, and she went to the bathroom to take some medicine, and after that she remembers nothing. Obviously the detective wasn't buying it, because how can you stab someone so many times and not remember it? As detectives were trying to figure out why Sabrina even did this to Lisa in the first place, they took a look at Lisa's phone and they saw text messages that revealed Sabrina's flirty behavior was messing with Lisa and Kevin's relationship. Lisa had sent a text to Kevin stating that he was spending too much time with Sabrina and not with his own family. Within hours of Lisa's death, Kevin had filed a claim for her $800,000 life insurance policy. He used that money to buy new cars, a new property in Florida, took flying lessons, but everything was going to come crashing down 6 months later because Sabrina was ready to talk. Sabrina sat down with a detective and stated that when she first moved in, she was very happy to be there. She finally had a loving family, but once tension grew between her and Lisa, she felt more like a guest and not a daughter. Sabrina took full responsibility of what she did to Lisa, but she stated Kevin was the one who told her to do this. Text messages between Sabrina and Kevin were released, and it showed how much he hated Lisa and he wanted her gone. Kevin told Sabrina that Lisa had multiple life insurance policies and they were worth a lot. Sabrina would confide in Kevin, and she told him how when she graduated high school, she wanted to become a massage therapist, and him being the ever supportive foster parent that he was, he told her that she could practice on him. And lo and behold, that massage quickly turned sexual. Kevin promised Sabrina that they would have their own home, she could take on the mother figure role, go to college, and she would get anything that she ever wanted in her life, but she had to end Lisa's life. The morning before the attack, Kevin drove Sabrina to school, and he told her that if Lisa didn't die, he was going to end his own life, so Sabrina knew what she had to do. Kevin told Sabrina that if she were to get caught, just to tell authorities that she blacked out, she doesn't remember anything that happened, and most likely she would get sent to a mental health care facility and wouldn't get any jail time. Ultimately, Kevin was found guilty and sentenced to life in prison. Sabrina pled guilty to her part as well, and she was sentenced to life in prison, but with the possibility of parole after 30 years.
They thought they'd found the killer until they found him dead at the side of the road too. And this photograph. It was 1988 in California. Mary Ellen and Robert Samuels looked like the perfect couple to the outside world. They'd been married for 6 years, and Robert was a big-time Hollywood cameraman bringing in big money. They had a daughter, Nicole, owned a business together, and seemed picture perfect until they announced their split. It came as a huge shock to everybody that knew the couple, but for the couple themselves, it had been a long time coming. Pretty soon, they were just cracking on and dating other people. But weirdly, they hadn't actually had a proper divorce yet, and were also still kind of semi-living together and sharing a dog. It wasn't ideal, and things were about to get even more messy. Because one evening in December, Mary Ellen walked back into the home to drop the dog off, to find Robert dead. The 40-year-old was lying on the floor with a gunshot wound to the head, and this was clearly no self-unaliving because he'd also seemingly been smacked in the head before he'd been killed, and also the gun was nowhere to be found. Nobody could figure out a reason why anybody would want to kill Robert. He was generally pretty well liked, although he did have a lot of money. But nothing had been stolen in the murder. Like, if this was a robbery gone wrong, surely something would have been taken. The case rumbled on for a while with no real leads until a mystery caller spoke with police and advised them to look at Mary Ellen. They also name-dropped a guy called James Bernstein, So how were these two linked? Well, it turned out Mary Ellen's teenage daughter was dating this James guy. Word on the street was that he could have been paid by her to get rid of Robert for a share of the life insurance money. Did Mary Ellen set this all up so she could just be financially set for life? The problem was James Bernstein couldn't reveal what he knew to the police because his body was found strangled at the side of the road in Ventura County the year later. Police found out just before Robert was killed he'd actually visited his divorce attorney to make some changes. He wanted to change over the agreement. He didn't want to just give half of everything that he owned to Mary Ellen, and he was trying to keep hold of the business. A friend of Mary Ellen's even told police that she'd admitted to her she was trying to find somebody to off Robert. And it turns out that in order to get James on board initially, she'd lied to him and told him that Robert was a child SAer to try and make him more likely to want to kill him. So after Robert was found murdered, Mary Ellen honestly didn't seem to do a good job of acting like she was bereaved in any way. She was out spending the life insurance money and living her best life. The only thing she did seem concerned about was the fact that James might snitch. And she was right to be worried because James had actually been a bit loose-lipped with the whole thing and had told somebody that he worked with that he knew why Robert was dead. And apparently word on the street was that he was going to confess. So Mary Ellen found another dodgy guy that a friend of hers knew to be a hitman for the hitman. It was like a Russian doll of hitmen. Mary Ellen went to this guy called Paul and said, again, an exaggerated version of the truth, that James was trying to blackmail her. So Paul agreed to get rid of him for some cash. Paul and a friend basically had to find a way to lure James to meet with them so they could kill him. So they said something like, we're going to go and meet some substance dealers and rob them. And James was like, okay, cool. But actually what happened was as soon as they met him, they jumped him and strangled him to death. In the end, Mary Ellen was found guilty at trial, but she was adamant that it was unfair because they over-sexualized her and she just liked to lie naked in heaps of cash, and that wasn't a crime. After appealing her death sentence, she was eventually given life without parole, and Paul was given 15 years to life.
Day 23, reading the Epstein files out loud until sick fucks are tossed feet first into wood chippers. This is an extremely disturbing email, and I have been kind of avoiding reading this one out loud. It's between Olivier Colum and Epstein. He is in finance. Olivier emails Epstein, says, thanks, very nice of you. Where are you now? Epstein replies, on my island in the Caribbean with an aquarium full of girls. Olivier responds, the king of Saudi Arabia has a few white sharks at his Jeddah palace. I totally prefer yours. Sure, I would enjoy the view. Epstein replies, as to our Russian, I guess some might refer to them as white sharks. Olivier responds, as long as you don't have any hammer-headed ones, ... I like white sharks. Epstein replies, no, some are like shrimp. You throw away the head and keep the body. Olivier replies, it gets worse. Olivier replies, I like shrimp, but not so much if it's too pink, although I'm definitely more into white than into any other color. I like your philosophy. Epstein replies to Olivier and says, I can't even think of the smell of black shrimp. Ugh. Wood chipper.
Instead of calling an ambulance, they laughed and threw beer in his face. Hours later, he was dead. Before we get into today's case, if you guys do prefer deep dives, I do post a brand new episode on the Born Investigation podcast every single week. It was February 2017 in Pennsylvania. Tim Piazza was just 19 years old and a student at Penn State University. Tim was a really sweet guy. He was kind of awkward, but in like an endearing way. Honestly, those are my favorite kind of people. He was known as a gentle giant. He majored in mechanical engineering with the goal of creating high-tech prosthetic limbs for children and soldiers. And it felt like he was really coming into his own. He was really growing in confidence since starting uni. One night he was invited to this frat party. Right now, correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like frats are kind of like official clubs. Usually there's a lot of drinking involved and like sick kind of initiations. Something that goes on at these parties is called hazing. hazing, which is actually illegal in a hell of a lot of states. It's like the most extreme kind of form of initiation / ritual you could think of. And Tim was a victim of this. So that night he'd barely had anything to eat prior to this party. I feel like we've all been there. I certainly have, where I haven't thought to line my stomach. But Tim was hazed into drinking the most insane amount of alcohol. More alcohol than honestly anybody would be able to cope with. He was served 18 drinks in just 90 minutes. That's just a game of football. Each pledge had to drink from a vodka bottle, down a beer, and then chug from a bag of wine. But it was the actions of the frat guys after this that truly defy belief. Soon it was pretty clear that Tim was in an absolute state. He was stumbling all over the place, his eyes were glazed over, and then everybody heard a huge thud. They were like, what the hell was that? Then they saw at the bottom of the basement stairs Tim's lifeless body. I'm like, at that point I would be calling an ambulance and being like, oh my god, he's seriously in need of urgent help. But no, 4 guys picked up Tim's floppy unconscious body, carried him back up the stairs and just chucked him on a sofa. And then instead of getting medical attention, they threw beer in his face. When Tim didn't wake up, still at this point, they didn't think to call an ambulance. They decided to just walk away. Left him lying there unconscious. It actually makes me sick. Now, somebody in this house did have morals. A newly initiated member called Cordell Davis. He was like, guys, what the hell are you doing? He needs help. Instead of listening to them, one of the frat members shoved him up against a wall and was like, we've got this under control. No, you don't. The hours ticked by and it honestly felt like these weird frat guys were honestly just interested on carrying on the party and having a good time rather than caring for Tim's well-being. He was lying there floating in and out of consciousness. Bless him, he was really trying to fight this. He actually tried to stand up numerous times. He was stumbling to try and get help, but he was so unstable that he just kept falling. He ended up falling over around 4 more times as the poison in his body honestly just made it impossible. Leaving Tim for 12 minutes without calling for help would have been bad enough. These animals left him for 12 hours. And by the time he was rushed to hospital, it was far, far too late. He'd injured his brain and ruptured his spleen. He tragically died the next day. But what made it such a bitter pill for his family to swallow is the fact that the surgeon was like, yeah, if these guys had got him help sooner, he probably would have survived. As you'd imagine, the family were raging. They were like, we are going to fight this. These guys are going to be held responsible for Tim's death. It resulted in one of the largest hazing prosecutions in US history. And it wasn't like these guys were drunk themselves too. One was even with it enough to Google, what does it mean when an intoxicated person's limbs go cold? He's dying, that's what it means. 18 frat members were ultimately charged with involuntary manslaughter and other offences, including hazing. The president and vice president of this so-called frat house, Brendan Young and Daniel Casey, were given just 2 to 4 months in prison after pleading guilty. What do you guys think? Because I really don't think that's enough.
He was about to become a father, but never got the chance, and what happens next makes this case truly heartbreaking. Andrew Bagby was born on September 25th of 1973, and he was a medical student undertaking his 3rd year residency. In early 1999, he began dating a woman named Shirley Turner, who was also a medical student. Friends of Andrew stated that Shirley wasn't really his type, and she would often make inappropriate and sexual comments. His friends kept their feelings to themselves because Andrew's last relationship ended really badly, which left him heartbroken. In 2000, Andrew graduated and moved to New York to undertake a surgical residency. At the same time, Shirley moved to Iowa, and the couple maintained a long-distance relationship. It became clear that surgery just wasn't for Andrew, and in 2001, he took a residency at a family practice in Pennsylvania, and he couldn't have been happier. In October of that year, Shirley bought a weapon, ammunition, and started taking firearm lessons. During this time, Shirley was showing obsessive behavior towards Andrew once she found out that he made a new female friend. Enough was enough, and on October 3rd of 2001, Andrew ended things with Shirley. The following day, Shirley kept calling Andrew, and she ended up making a 16-hour drive to go visit Andrew with her weapon on the passenger side of her car. On the early morning of November 5th, Andrew opened the door to find Shirley very distressed, but he was able to calm her down. Andrew went to work that day, but he was visibly shaken, and he confided in his coworker of what happened that morning. His friend begged him not to meet up with Shirley by himself, but he dismissed this and told his friend that he would meet them after talking with Shirley, but he would never make it. On November 6 of 2001, Andrew's body was found near his car in a parking lot. He had been shot 5 times, once in the face, once in the chest, once in the back of the head and twice in the buttocks. Police in Pennsylvania immediately contacted Shirley, and she stated that she was sick in bed all day. But there was evidence that she used Andrew's house phone, so it was obvious that it was her. By the time a warrant was issued for her arrest, Shirley had fled to Canada. In December, the case took a turn when Shirley announced that she was pregnant with Andrew's child. In 2002, Shirley gave birth to a healthy baby boy and named him Zachary Andrew Turner. Zachary's birth was full of years of custody battles, prison visits, frustration, heartbreak, and Andrew's parents were trying so hard to get full custody of Zachary. Shirley spent a total of 2 months in prison awaiting trial, and the judge stated that she didn't seem like a danger to the public, so she was given bail. Just 8 months after she was released, Shirley gave her son substances, tied him to her stomach, jumped into the ocean with him, and ended both of their lives. Not only did Andrew's parents lose their son, but they also lost their first grandchild in the most tragic way.
A quadruple amputee has been arrested for murder, and people are calling him the US version of Oscar Pistorius. Dayton Weber is a 27-year-old professional athlete from Maryland. Apparently, he is world class at cornhole. I have no idea what cornhole even is, but basically when he was really little, he had a bacterial infection and this led to sepsis. He ended up having to have his arms and legs amputated just to have some sort of shot at survival. They honestly thought he was going to die. He overcame the odds and actually became a professional athlete. It blew people's minds. But something horrific unfolded very recently on the 22nd of March. Police in the area got a frantic phone call just before 10:30 p.m. Witnesses were like, yeah, we were in the back seat of this car and Dayton was driving and his passenger was a guy called Braddock Wells. The passengers were horrified when all of a sudden they saw Dayton pull out a weapon and shoot Braddock. They couldn't believe what they were hearing when Dayton turned round to them in the back seat and said, "Can you help me get rid of this body?" They told police they were like, absolutely not. They got out the car and so did Dayton and he legged it out of there. When police heard this, they knew a very dangerous individual was on the loose, armed. They dispatched an army of police officers in vehicles to scour the area and try and hunt him down. Time really was of the essence if this guy had a loaded weapon. As the clock ticked down, it felt like the search began to get more and more frantic. And finally, after 2 hours, they did track Dayton down. He was arrested over 100 miles away in Charlottesville, Virginia. Now, tragically, they did also find someone else, Braddock, and he was deceased. He was lifeless and had just been dumped in someone's yard. Dayton is charged now with first-degree murder among other charges and is awaiting further investigation.
She allegedly convinced doctors that her 3-year-old child couldn't walk and was struggling with eating. It went so far that they gave this child multiple surgical procedures, including a G-tube, and the police are now saying none of that was necessary and that this is a clear case of Munchausen's by proxy. Her name is Caitlin Lara, and according to police, she attempted to establish her son's difficulty with eating from the day that he was born. She claimed to the nurse that he was struggling with eating. The nurse comes right over and he's just fine. During his first 2 years of life, Caitlin allegedly took him to the doctors repeatedly over his difficulty with eating, and in these appointments, the police say that she told them that he had this horribly traumatic birth. Well, it turns out that that was not true, according to her doctor. She also told these doctors that he had a myriad of diagnoses, including cerebral palsy, a mitochondrial disorder, autism, all sorts of things. Again, there's no proof the police can find that he was diagnosed with any of those things. Police say in February of 2025, things really ramped up and she began doctor shopping. Everything I'm about to say comes from police. So apparently she took her son to a doctor about the eating issues, and that doctor recommended feeding therapy. It appears that wasn't the answer she was looking for, so she calls another doctor and tells them that the other doctor was just dismissive of her concerns. March 2025, she tells the doctor that her son's sheets smell like acid and she thinks that he's throwing up all night long. She allegedly pushes really hard for a G-tube, even saying that this other doctor said she should ask for one. But when police talked to that doctor, they said that's not what they said. That same month, she brings her child back to the hospital claiming that he's suffering from dehydration and food aversions. And what's crazy is if you go onto her socials, you can see in real time her posting all about this. Now, the father of the child said that the son had ate a half bag of popcorn and a full bag of chips without issues. And when the police interviewed him, He said that she dealt with all the medical stuff and that he had no idea anything wasn't right. And actually, this entire investigation stemmed from when she requested a hospice referral. And the police said when they told the father about that he was visibly shocked. May 2025, allegedly the doctors had been pushing less invasive options versus the G-tube, but they claimed that Caitlin was very pushy for it, and she got it. Later that month, she brings her son back, but this time the hospital is suspicious and they are secretly surveilling her. According to a nurse, she came out telling them that she had tried giving her son a lot of food, but he just didn't want it. They watched the cameras back and that never happened. The footage also showed her wheelchair-bound child who will never be out of that wheelchair, moving around, walking, climbing, standing up. June 2025. The hospital obviously saw all of this and they make a report to the police. Well, this police station transfers it to another police station, but that one apparently only had 2 officers. And they said, we're not equipped to handle this. So they transferred it to somebody else. And so it never got picked up. And after that, she moves to another hospital. Her son's teacher also noticed the same things, that her son is eating just fine, that he's very mobile. So what's the deal here? So the teacher also makes a report. So she pulls her child out of school. And mind you, again, this is all according to the police. So now it's November, December 2025 at the new hospital, and they perform another procedure on this poor child. She actually has videos of her son crying in pain, having things done to him that allegedly did not need to be done, and it is heartbreaking. They get discharged January 2026, but she comes back in February, and she said there's complications with the tube. Well, the hospital, this new hospital, is suspicious, and they wanted to do a constant monitoring, watching, what's going on. She allegedly refuses this, but she does ask for 2 things: the hospice referral and for a TPN. The police said if they had given this child the TPN, that would have given her direct access to this child's bloodstream. She also requested they take him off all of his medications besides the psychiatric ones. Mind you, he was on 17 medications. 17. Because of all of this, the doctor ends up calling a pediatric abuse doctor who comes and is like, yeah, no, you need to report this. This is not right. So CPS had been involved a while back, but they closed the case. And then she had a new CPS case, and she was texting this CPS worker all the evidence that he's actually a sick child. And she also requested that the CPS worker go get her computer from the hospital. Well, this worker could not let this go. And honestly, this is one of the first times I think I've ever been CPS is actually who helped this situation. Well, CPS takes the child from the home and the police actually investigate the case. And the sheriff that's doing it, he actually adopted a child who suffered from medical abuse. And he said this hits so close to home for him. After his removal, he's eating normally. Not only is he crawling and walking, he's running. He doesn't need a wheelchair. He is eating them out of house and home, is what they said. He is just fine. And the police say that that is the biggest proof that you could have, that he never needed any of this. And now finally, after all of this time, she has been arrested. If the first police who were sent this report actually investigated it, this child would have had a whole year less of help. Oh, and she's also being investigated for all the fundraisers that she was doing because her child was just so sick and she needed help, as well as Medicaid fraud. She is, unfortunately, currently out on bond. She's not allowed to be anywhere near her child or any other minors for that matter. Her lawyer claims that when people hear her side of the story that they're going to understand that all of this was necessary. I'm absolutely willing to listen, but the fact that he is doing so well right now, I don't know what kind of proof you could have. We'll definitely keep you guys updated on this one. There's actually a lot more that I could go into on this, but this is already super long. We will see what happens.